hegemony's grand illusion for 30 cycles, the Galactic Hegemony believed it had tamed humanity. Their vast empire functioned with cold efficiency, shaping thousands of species into compliant subjects. They saw themselves as the ultimate authority, a civilization so advanced that no lesser race could challenge its rule. Humanity was no exception. At first, Earth had resisted, but resistance was futile against an empire that had existed for millennia. The hegemony dismantled Earth's governments, rewrote its economic systems, and enforced their own laws. Humanity complied. The integration was seamless, almost too seamless. The hegemony took pride in its work. Earth, once chaotic and unpredictable, was now another obedient world under their control. The humans had adapted quickly, too quickly, but no one questioned it. Why would they? Humanity had been pacified, or so they thought. The xenologist's doubts. Triumphant, a hegemony xenologist, had studied countless species. He had watched civilizations crumble under the weight of assimilation. Yet something about humanity felt different. On the surface, humans followed every law, obeyed every directive, and paid every tax. They sent representatives to the hegemony Senate, integrated into bureaucratic ranks, and even volunteered for interstellar service. But beneath the surface, something was off. Humans retained an unsettling degree of autonomy. They followed rules, but only when observed. They excelled in every field, yet never truly conformed. Most disturbingly, they did not fear the hegemony. Other species had trembled under imperial rule. Humanity simply played along. Triumphant submitted reports warning of this anomaly. He was ignored. Humans are compliant, his superiors scoffed. They lack the ambition to challenge us. And yet doubt gnawed at him. Something was missing, something the hegemony had failed to see. The quiet observation. Humanity had never resisted, never rebelled. They had watched. For decades, they had studied hegemony tactics, analyzed every fleet movement, and mapped every bureaucratic inefficiency. They memorized the rigid battle doctrines, the predictable formations, the reliance on outdated strategies. The hegemony saw obedience. Humanity saw a fatal weakness. Deep in the shadows, encrypted messages flowed. Off-world colonies maintained stockpiles of advanced weapons, hidden behind layers of false records. Factories produced warships under the guise of civilian infrastructure. Every law imposed by the hegemony had been followed, but only on paper. In reality, humanity had rewritten the rules. Earth never forgot what it meant to prepare for war. They just never let their enemies see it coming. The death warrant. The order arrived with bureaucratic indifference. A simple notice transmitted across the hegemony network. Humanity has been deemed non-compliant, full eradication authorized. There was no grand declaration, no dramatic speech, just a cold administrative directive, as routine as a tax audit. The extermination fleet was mobilized, its destination set for Earth. The hegemony expected no resistance. Why would they? Humanity had never fought back before. They were docile, predictable, weak. The extermination force entered Sol's orbit without incident. No human ships moved to intercept. No distress signals were sent. Earth's surface appeared serene. Then the trap was sprung. The fatal miscalculation. The first orbital platforms came online in an instant. Hidden stations revealing massive weapon array. AI-controlled missile silos launched volleys of railgun rounds, slicing through hegemony dreadnoughts before they could raise their shields. Human warships, which did not exist according to hegemony records, decloaked across the system, their engines roaring to life. Entire battle fleets emerged from asteroid belts, disguised bases, and seemingly uninhabited moons. The hegemony had spent decades believing humanity was conquered. Humanity had spent decades preparing for war. The battle was over before it began. The hegemony learned too late the fundamental truth of human nature. You should never corner a species that evolved for war. The report that changed everything. A classified document arrived on every Galactic Council member's desk, its file encryption more secure than any in recorded history. It bore a simple but unsettling title. A brief overview of human military capabilities that you really should have asked about earlier. The initial reaction was skepticism, dismissal. Surely this was some form of psychological warfare, human bravado attempting to mask their inferiority. The Council had studied Earth and its people, had assessed their limitations, primitive, reckless, unworthy of the stars. Yet as the document was decrypted, an eerie silence spread across the council chamber. Detailed reports intercepted communications, and recorded military exercises painted a picture of a species not only adept at war, but one that had been playing a far longer game than anyone had realized. The final page contained a single chilling note. The moment you realized we were a threat was the moment you lost. the impossible surrender. 3 minutes later, alarms blared across the Senju sector. The hegemony's most fortified military station, a stronghold that had never fallen in recorded history, had surrendered without a single shot fired. Its commander, a veteran of countless skirmishes, had barely managed to compose himself as he delivered the message, "We are surrounded." Their forces appeared undetected within our own defense perimeter. Our sensors show nothing, yet our external comms are flooded with their presence. We cannot fight what we cannot see. We surrender. The council erupted into chaos. A station of such importance could not have been taken so easily. No recorded fleet movements, no invasion preparations detected. How had the humans achieved this? The answer was worse than they could have imagined. The panic sets in across the council chambers. Disbelief gave way to fear. The hegemony's vast and efficient intelligence network had never failed before, and yet there was no sign, no trace of human mobilization. Every method of fleet tracking, every sophisticated surveillance drone, every hyperspace monitoring station had detected nothing. The council members turned to their most trusted analysts, demanding answers, demanding logic. None came. We underestimated them, one whispered. No, another corrected, voice shaking. We never understood them at all. For the first time, the hegemony faced an enemy that had rewritten the rules of war itself. The second message arrives. A new transmission flashed across the council's private network. Unlike the first, it contained no reports, no explanations, just a simple taunting line. Funny thing about that, we found your sensor technology rather limited, so we upgraded it. You should be getting much better readings now. The room went deathly silent. Every system in the hegemony relied on its vast sensor network, an interconnected web of surveillance and tracking systems spanning thousands of sectors, and humanity had been inside it all along. One counselor finally broke the silence. They let us believe we had the upper hand. They let us think we were the conquerors. And now, another whispered. The answer came from the head of military strategy, who had been staring at the message with unblinking eyes. Now, they're letting us know we were never in control. Realization. The war had already begun. The hegemony had been preparing for war, believing it still had time to strike first. Plans were in place. Fleets were stationed. Strategies crafted. Humanity, however, had already moved. They had been waging a different kind of war. One fought in shadows, in systems unnoticed, in battles that had been over before the first shot was fired. The council members sat frozen in realization. This was not a warning. This was not a declaration. This was a statement of fact. The war had already begun, and humanity was winning. The council chamber was silent, not the silence of peace, but of impending doom. The grand strategist of the hegemony stared at the reports scrolling across the hollow display, his mandibles clicking in disbelief. This cannot be possible, muttered Chancellor Zirak, his bioluminescent skin flickering with anxiety. For centuries, the hegemony had ruled the galaxy unchallenged, shaping lesser species in its image, enforcing its will with precision and absolute power. Humanity had been another addition to its grand tapestry, a backwater species assimilated without resistance. But the reports told a different story, a story of deception, patience, and an enemy that had been preparing while they remained blind. How long? Zirak finally asked. Admiral Valthor hesitated. We don't know. Perhaps decades. Perhaps since the very moment we made first contact. The question was no longer how humanity had achieved this. It was how they had kept it hidden for so long. Across the hegemony, intelligence agencies scrambled for answers. Fleets had disappeared, not destroyed, not ambushed, simply gone. The official records listed humanity's naval strength as modest. Nothing that could rival even a single hegemony battle group. And yet entire armadas had materialized out of the void, deploying precision strikes at key installations before fading into the darkness once more. Our tracking systems never detected them, an intelligence officer reported. It's as if they were never there until they wanted us to see them. Panic spread like wildfire. What else had humanity been hiding? How deep did the deception go? For years, the hegemony had believed its spies were feeding it accurate reports on humanity's technological progress. But now, analysts were uncovering a chilling reality. Every piece of intelligence, every intercepted transmission, had been carefully orchestrated. Humanity hadn't just hidden its capabilities, it had crafted an illusion, showing the hegemony precisely what it wanted to see. The primitive technology, the limited fleet capacity, the lack of advanced strategic capability. It had all been a lie. They played us. One analyst whispered. From the beginning, the revelation struck like a death knell. Humanity had been studying them, learning their weaknesses, exploiting their arrogance, and now, when the time was right, they had moved with precision. The hegemony's response was immediate. A battle fleet,
armed with the finest warships the Empire had to offer, was dispatched to a human colony to demonstrate superiority. They expected a swift, one-sided engagement. They expected humanity to kneel as all others had before them. What they got was annihilation. The first shot was never fired by them. Human defenses activated with eerie precision. Energy signatures unlike anything recorded before lighting up the void. The Hegemony's ships were dissected, torn apart by weapons they couldn't comprehend, destroyed by strategies that countered their every move before they could even make them. The battle lasted minutes. Then, silence. Word of the massacre spread. Fear gripped the ruling faction. Some demanded immediate retaliation, unwilling to believe in humanity's newfound power. They must have had help, another species, internal sabotage, something. Others, the wiser ones, understood the truth. We underestimated them, and now we are paying the price. If we continue down this path, it will not be a war, it will be extermination ours. For the first time in history, the unity of the hegemony fractured. Infighting erupted. Some sought peace, others sought vengeance. Neither would get their wish. The final nail in the coffin arrived in the form of a single classified report, one that had been buried deep within the hegemony's most secret archives. Humanity hadn't just surpassed them technologically, they had infiltrated them. For years, human operatives had been embedded within the hegemony's research facilities, silently siphoning information, subtly altering data, subtly ensuring that the hegemony's own advancements would serve humanity's needs instead. Everything the hegemony had built, every secret innovation, every classified project, humanity had known about it, and they had used it against them. The war wasn't starting. The war was already over, and humanity had won. Narration begins. The hegemony had ruled the stars for millennia, its dominance unquestioned, its fleets unmatched. But now, desperation had taken hold. Their military leaders, blinded by arrogance, believed brute force could undo their mistake. And so, they gathered their armada, thousands of warships, a display of overwhelming might. They were convinced that numbers alone could break humanity's resistance. They were wrong. Across the void, humanity watched. They did not move to counter. They did not scramble their forces in panic. Instead, they observed, waiting for the inevitable. The hegemony was about to learn that humanity no longer fought wars the way others did. The offensive began, warships surging forward in perfect formation, a tidal wave of destruction aimed at humanity's colony. But the weapons they had brought to bear, the tactics they had honed for centuries, were outdated, obsolete against an enemy that had rewritten the rules of war. The hegemony had launched an attack against Ghost. The first hegemony warships winked out of existence. Their destruction so swift, their distress calls never even registered. Entire battle formations were wiped away.
Silence. Panic spread through the fleet. The hegemony's admirals barked orders, demanding explanations. How was this possible? How could fleets simply vanish? The answer was terrifying in its simplicity. Humanity had mastered the art of war in ways the hegemony had never imagined. Their warships did not broadcast their presence. Their weapons did not leave a trace. Stealth fleets drifted between the stars, unseen, unheard, striking with surgical precision. Predictive AI calculated enemy movements before they were even made, preempting every maneuver, countering every strategy. Quantum warfare infected hegemony systems, turning their own networks against them. The hegemony had prepared for a conventional war. Humanity had prepared for extermination. Admiral Graltak of the hegemony stared at the empty battlefield before him. His forces, the pride of his people, had been reduced to debris in the cold void. There had been no grand battle, no heroic stand, only annihilation. Frantic distress signals filled the command channel, ships blinking out of existence, entire fleets responding with silence. Hegemony commanders issued orders to retreat, but there was nowhere to run. The moment their ships activated their FTL drives, they were intercepted. The moment they attempted to regroup, humanity's invisible war machine struck again. The battlefield was not a war zone, it was a slaughterhouse. For the first time in history, the hegemony understood fear. On a distant observation deck, a lone xenologist watched the downfall of his empire. He had studied humanity for decades, dismissed them as fragile, short-lived creatures. He had believed in the hegemony's superiority. He had been a fool. Humanity had never been weak. They had never been primitive. They had simply waited, biding their time, evolving in the shadow. Their patience had been their greatest weapon. The xenologist whispered to himself, a realization sinking in with terrifying clarity. They were always ready. They were always watching. He turned away from the screens, unable to bear witness any longer. His people had lost. No, They had never even stood a chance. With their fleets in ruin, their empire in shambles, the Hegemony's ruling council did the unthinkable. They surrendered. A transmission was sent to the Human War Council, a plea for negotiations, an admission of defeat. They would accept any term, anything to stop the destruction. For the first time in their history, the Hegemony bowed before another species. They had ruled with an iron fist for centuries. Now they could only beg. Humanity responded. A single message was returned. There will be no negotiations, no ceasefire, only surrender, only justice. The Hegemony had sought to exterminate humanity, to erase them from existence. Now they would face the consequences. For every world burned, reparations would be paid. For every life lost, restitution demanded. Humanity would not destroy them. That would be too kind. Instead, they would ensure the galaxy never forgot what had happened. The Hegemony's legacy would be one of failure, of humiliation, of a species that had dared to challenge humanity and lost. This was not a war. This was a reckoning. The Hegemony, once the undisputed ruler of the stars, lay in ruin. What had taken millennia to build had crumbled in mere weeks. The halls of the Grand Council, once filled with the echoes of dominance, now carried only the whispers of defeat. The surviving members of the ruling elite, those who had not fled or perished, sat in solemn silence, their fates sealed. The surrender was not negotiated. It was dictated. Humanity had offered no conditions, only absolutes. The document was signed, and with it the Hegemony ceased to exist. For the first time in galactic history, a single species held absolute power, and it was not the one anyone had expected. Where once the Hegemony had ruled with an iron fist, now humanity stood at the center of interstellar governance. The Galactic Council was reformed, not as a puppet of a single empire, but as a true representation of all species. Humanity, despite its newfound supremacy, did not seek to rule as the Hegemony once had. New laws were drafted, ensuring that no species would suffer the oppression that had once been commonplace. Former vassal states, long bound by chains of servitude, now held seats at the table. The balance of power shifted, and for the first time, the galaxy felt a semblance of justice. Yet, even as order was restored, the question remained: could power truly be wielded without corruption? To many, humanity was a beacon of hope. To others, a specter of fear. The oppressed saw their liberators, those who had shattered the chains that bound them. But there were whispers that wondered what would happen when the strongest species in the galaxy refused to be ruled. Would humanity remain the righteous warrior, the guardian of balance, or had the galaxy merely exchanged one empire for another? The shadows of past tyrannies lingered, and even as statues were toppled and old regimes dismantled, the fear of the unknown remained. Hope and fear were two sides of the same coin, and the galaxy had yet to see which face humanity would show. Among the defeated was the xenologist, a scholar who had dedicated their life to proving humanity's inferiority. Every paper, every report, every declaration had been built upon a foundation of arrogance, a belief that humans were beneath true galactic civilization. Now, as they watched the remains of their empire burn, they understood the depth of their miscalculation. Humanity had never been weak, only patient. The Hegemony had been fighting the last war, while humanity had prepared for the next one. Disgraced and disillusioned, the xenologist resigned from their position, vanishing into the obscurity of history. Their life's work had not been disproven. It had been rendered meaningless, and that was a truth too unbearable to face. With the ashes of the old order scattered across the stars, humanity made its first attempt. No species would ever face forced extinction again. The stars, once ruled by tyrants, now belonged to those willing to defend them. Peace was not granted by divine right, nor sustained by complacency. It was upheld by those who understood its costs. As the final words of humanity's proclamation echoed across the galaxy, a lesson was etched into history. Never underestimate a species that stockpiles for war under the guise of peace. The true endgame revealed. Interior, a darkened war room, deep within Earth's most secure intelligence facility. The air hums with tension as holographic projections of the galaxy flicker across the room. Narrator, the final pieces fall into place. The war was never about survival. It was about control. Humanity had not just prepared for victory. They had orchestrated it from the very beginning. The Hegemony's collapse was merely the first step in a plan centuries in the making. A grizzled intelligence officer leans forward, his voice steady but cold. Officer, we let them think we were weak. We let them think they were winning. And now we hold every relay, every trade route, every shipyard.
The question isn't whether they'll resist. The question is how long they'll last if they do. Silence fills the room. The war may be over, but the real work is just beginning. Reshaping the galactic order. Exterior. Former hegemony capital world. The city, once a symbol of dominance, is now under human oversight. The banners of the fallen empire are replaced with a new emblem, one that promises order, but on humanity's terms. The hegemony's influence had once stretched across the stars, dictating the fate of countless civilizations. Now their great fortresses stood as monuments to their own failure, repurposed into the foundation of a new order. An order where humanity was not just a participant, but the architect. A delegation of alien representatives watch in uneasy silence as human engineers inspect the remnants of the hegemony's former fleet. Alien diplomat, and what assurances do we have that we won't be next? That humanity won't become the very empire it claims to despise? A human official offers a measured smile, hands folded behind their back. Human official, we don't rule, we ensure, we enforce, we correct mistakes before they happen. If that makes you uneasy, perhaps you were part of the problem. A smile that speaks volumes. Interior, a high-stakes diplomatic chamber. Two figures sit across from each other, a human diplomat and an alien leader whose people once fought alongside the hegemony. Narrator. Power was no longer about warships and army. It was about influence, about understanding the game long before the pieces even moved. The alien leader studies the human before him, searching for weakness. He finds none. Alien leader. Your terms are generous, suspiciously so, and yet something tells me refusing would be unwise. The human diplomat smiles, calm, confident, in control. Human diplomat, it's not about generosity, it's about education. We're offering you a lesson in survival. Accept, and you'll thrive. Decline, and well, history has already shown what happens. Final words, final lesson. A classroom of sorts, not of desks and books, but of empires and treaties. The galaxy, now a student under the watchful eyes of its new instructor. Narrator. Some lessons are taught through words, others through war, but the most enduring lesson, those are written in the ruins of the old world and the foundations of the new. The diplomat stands, turning to leave, a final glance back, a knowing smile. Human diplomat, class is officially over. The door closes. The galaxy will never be the